This is a cool little museum, and it's a cool museum in many ways, not just because of the people here and not just because of your exhibit, but because of where you're located and how you really can plant your flag and say, no, we are really at the forefront of freedom in America and freedom in the world. And you have a great story to tell, and you were telling that story effortlessly in the community. You are listening to Historyman, the platform for historians, curators, and authors to tell their stories of the American Revolution, walk in the footsteps of heroes, and proclaim freedom reigns. On today's episode, we are very fortunate and honored to have Caitlin Dobbins, the museum director of the Museum of the Waxhaws in Waxhaw, North Carolina. So welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Caitlin, you have a wonderful museum here located in, quite frankly, one of the most historic places in the world, in the United States especially, but definitely the world when you talk about freedom. Freedom that resonates with every living human being on the face of this earth. And this is really a place that was a epicenter of the fight for freedom in the American War of Independence. So I know you're very honored to be here.
Oh, of course. A lot of people don't know, but we do hold a lot of Revolutionary War history here. We are trying our best to bring it to people's attention through reenactments, through events.
Speaking of reenactments, you just had a big reenactment here a few weeks ago.
We did. We had the Battle of the Waxhaws, June 6th, 7th, and 8th, and that is an annual event. So if you guys are in the area next year on the first weekend of June, come see us. It'll be really fun. We had over 150 reenactors doing living history, doing demonstrations, doing so many different things, and it's really fun.
There was a big march into Waxhaws that was a pretty big kickoff event for this reenactment weekend that you had.
It is. So it's a fun way to get people. You can advertise all you want, and you're still not going to reach everybody. So it's a really fun way to get people you wouldn't normally reach to come to the event, because they see the people in their outfits and their historical dress, and it gets them excited. They see their muskets, and they're really excited about that. And we had the horses too this year, so people loved seeing the horses march in as well.
Among some of the reenactors that I saw you had some British here, and then you had the Guilford Courthouse fife and drum.
We did. We were very excited to have them.
And they were playing all the way into Waxhaws. And then you had the South Carolina Second, which is a pretty big reenactment group out of South Carolina. You had from a historical perspective, there was actually even a skirmish here in this area. This is known as kind of a shelter area for the Patriots during the American Revolution, but there was a small little skirmish that occurred in the Waxhaws.
Mm-hmm. So it was at the Walk-Up Plantation House. It's near what we know today now as JARS. So they are a missionary group. They go out and translate the Bible for different countries. But the house is still there. Nobody lives in it, but it is still privately owned. And the skirmish that took place there had to do with William Davey.
Well, William Richardson Davey is a huge hero from this part of the country. William Richardson Davey at the time of the Revolutionary War was a major, but he later became one of the founders of UNC Chapel Hill.
Yes.
And a governor of North Carolina. He was very important in the ratifying of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. He was named after a local Presbyterian minister.
Yes, he was, yes.
And he was a mentor to our president from this area, Andrew Jackson. In fact, he actually moved to Halifax after the Revolutionary War with his wife, and because that was almost a straight shot to D.C. at the time, that he acted as mentor and a advisor to Andrew Jackson while Andrew Jackson was in the White House. So huge. This is William Richardson Davies and Andrew Jackson's home place.
Mm-hmm. And Andrew Jackson and his brother were actually messengers for Davy during the Revolution.
That's right.
Because
That's right.
Jackson and his brother were 13 and 15 at that time, so they weren't they weren't quite old enough to be.
But it's a tragic story.
Mm-hmm.
It
It
really
is,
is. The mom was trying to hold it together after her husband died. Her sons, one of them went off to war and fought at Stono Ferry, died of heat stroke during that battle. Andrew and his other brother,
I believe his other brother's name was Robert.
Robert, that's right. They were captured by the British, taken down
Yes.
to Camden.
And I believe his brother, while they were prisoners there, I believe he got smallpox. I believe
They did.
And then they got released, and his brother actually died, I think, 2 days after he got back.
Yeah, yeah.
And then his mother went to Charleston to help take care of people who had fallen to ship fever, and she also died there. So that left Jackson as an orphan.
The last man standing
Yes.
in many respects. And he wasn't, from
Yeah.
our perspective, he wasn't a man at the time, but he was 14,
But at
15,
that time, he had to
16.
be.
Yeah, he had to be. He had to step up. Well, tell us how people can get a hold of you here at the museum.
So we are open currently Fridays and Saturdays from 10 to 5, and we sell our last ticket for admission at 4, just to give you enough time to really get through the exhibits and through all the buildings. And we are best reached at email. It's museumofthewaxhaws0@gmail.com. You can give us a call, but I'm only here some days of the week, so email is a lot faster, but I will get back to your voicemail if you call. And we also have a website, which has been updated, so we have all our upcoming events on there, everything like that. And then our Facebook as well is a very good place to. You can send us a message on Facebook, anything like that.
You've got a lot of momentum going on here at this museum. And really, this is part and parcel to you and your team coming together and saying, okay, we want to take ownership of this and be a part of this community. And tell us a little bit about what people will find in the exhibits within the museum.
Yeah. So when you first come in, you'll go to the front desk, check in, get your little exhibit guide, and then you come in. And when you go into the exhibit hall and go to the left, we've got a map of the old Waxhaw settlement first, just so you can kind of get an idea of what the Waxhaws was at that point, because the town of Waxhaw was incorporated in 1889. So during the Revolution, the Waxhaws was all the way up into Mecklenburg County and all the way down into Beaufort. So that's why the Beaufort Massacre is referred to as the Battle of the Waxhaws, because at that point it was Waxhaw.
So when you say Beaufort, you're talking about a small little community on the state line. We're not talking about Beaufort, South Carolina, or you're not talking about even Beaufort, North Carolina.
Yeah.
You're talking, when I say Beaufort, South Carolina, you're not talking about the coastal town.
No, so this is BUFORD, so Beaufort. And it is a very small town, even today. And it's where a battle took place, and it was a significant turning point in the Revolution for us, because it was somewhat of a massacre, if some would call it, which they do. So Tarleton had chased the militia up from Camden, and long story short, the militia tried to surrender, and Tarleton did not take it, and they were massacred. So that was kind of encouragement for the rest of the colonists to kind of pick a side. So they were either loyalists or they were patriots. And a lot of people in the area after that happened were patriots, because those are people they knew, it was in their community, and they saw how it really happened.
Do you know the origins of the name Waxhaw?
So there was a Native American tribe that lived here. They were the Waxhaws. Unfortunately, by about 1720, 1730, there was not very many of them left, so they assimilated into the Catawba. They were a pretty small tribe to begin with. They had 2 villages in the area, and then smallpox, of course, was here. And then they were also at war with other tribes. So they didn't have a lot of things on their side for that time period. And so when their numbers dwindled, they just assimilated into the Catawba, which is, of course, a much larger tribe in the area. So we don't really know a lot about them specifically, because there wasn't a lot written down about them. So Juan Pardo,
The Spanish explorer, Juan
yes,
Pardo.
yeah. So he was in the area, but he did not have any interactions with the Waxhaws that he wrote down. The first recorded interaction with them was by John Lawson in 1660. And then he mentioned them again in 1701. He said there were about 2,000 people living in the two villages, so that was probably the height of their numbers. But again, there's not a lot known about them, unfortunately, because they were gone so early.
Well, you actually have some conquistador helmets in your museum. Tell us a little bit about that.
We do. So they are from the Spanish presence in the Carolinas, which was very early on. A lot of people don't know that the Spanish were here before the British were here. And they were worn by Captain Pardo's men when they were in the area here. And they are on loan to us from a wonderful person.
Okay. So as you go around the museum, what's next? So you have one Pardo, and if you read the book by Diamond called Guns, Germs, and Steel, he talks a little bit about the European influence on Native Americans, and it wasn't totally a conquering type of influence. The downfall of many of the Native Americans was just their exposure, in many respects, to the diseases that the Europeans brought, smallpox being one of those.
Yeah. From what we know, the Waxhaws, I believe they had I wouldn't call it a great relationship with the explorers, but it was a good, I believe they did some trading, stuff like that. It wasn't, they weren't immediately at war with each other.
I see.
But as you go around, when you get done with that case, you'll see a large case of arrowheads and other things. Those were donated to us by the Ray family, which is a local, they were owned a very large plantation up towards Charlotte. And they actually came in, I believe last summer, and they had buckets full of arrowheads. And they donated them to us, very luckily. So we have them in the exhibit hall, and we also have them in a couple other places throughout the building, just so we could have them displayed.
Sure.
Because it takes a lot of space to lay them all out flat. And then you'll go in a little farther, and to the left we have a mock cabin set up for the time. It kind of shows you how Scotch-Irish home life looked. So you've got the fireplace, the hearth, which is where you did all your cooking, and everything, heat, warmth, light, all that. And we've got a spinning wheel in there. We've got a couple of mannequins, and they are kind of doing some daily tasks. Like one of them is cooking. One of them is probably coming in from working on the farm or hunting or something like that. And then across from that, we have our wagon. So our wagon is probably our most recognizable artifact. It's very large. I believe it was the first artifact that was in the building. So they brought it in. It was disassembled. It is original. It was disassembled in the Howie family barn. And they donated it to us and brought it in and built it inside of our exhibit hall. So when you come in, you'll notice that there's no way to roll it out because it was built inside. They used it to come down the Great Wagon Road from Pennsylvania, stuff like that, which is how Andrew Jackson's family would have come down. They would have come over from Ireland, gone through Pennsylvania, and come down the Great Wagon Road to the Waxhaws.
Okay.
And it's just a really cool piece. I like to tell people that you probably weren't riding in the wagon. You were probably walking next to it because that was carrying all your stuff. So you would probably walk from Pennsylvania to here. It would take quite a while, but you weren't riding in the wagon.
Right. Well, it certainly plays into the great migrations that you had coming out of Ireland, Scotch-Irish trying to flee some of the religious persecution that they were going through, and quite frankly, the living next to the British and living next to people who were just against them all the way. This was a huge Presbyterian Scotch-Irish settlement at that time.
Very much so, yeah.
Yes.
And I didn't mention it earlier, the name of the wagon is the Conestoga wagon. It's
so that is a Conestoga. Oh, that's nice.
And we also, as we mentioned earlier, this is the birthplace of Andrew Jackson, the 7th president. A lot of people argue about if he was born in North Carolina or South Carolina. And at this point today, we've kind of come to a agreement that it could have been either. Some people will still argue it very, very fiercely. But I like to show people the map that I mentioned earlier and show them where the state line was. And I always like to say that just because we know today where the state line is doesn't mean that they knew where the state line was. Or
That's right.
I guess at that point it wasn't a state.
That's right.
So Andrew Jackson's mother, after his father passed away, had 2 sisters in the area. One lived over what is today the South Carolina line, and one lived right over the other side of North Carolina. And they did not record which sister she stayed with when he was born. So it could have been either way. It could have been North Carolina in the Waxhaws, and it could have been South Carolina in the Waxhaws. But I guess until we find that source, we will never know 100% for sure.
Right.
Because as far as I know, he never declared either himself before he passed.
Well, this was really a no man's land in some respects. It was a big gray area between North and South Carolina, and you had a lot of people who, when the tax man came into this area, and the tax man was from North Carolina, they all of a sudden said, "Oh no, we live in South Carolina." Mm-hmm. And when the tax man from South Carolina came, "Oh no, we live in North Carolina." So it certainly was a gray area, and quite frankly, that state line did not really get finalized until Governor Haley out of South Carolina and whoever was in North Carolina at the time just said, "Okay, let's make this happen." And so that was just recently that it became formalized. So what else in the museum?
So as you go around, we've got the only regional exhibit about Beaufort's massacre. So it tells you about what happened, tells you all the details about the event. And we also have our exhibit guide that you can carry with you. So if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about each of the things, you can take it with you. Because I know some people, when they come into a museum, they like to read in depth, and some people don't, which is fine. But we've got a Green Dragoon uniform, which is what Tarleton's unit would have been wearing, the cavalry unit. And then we do have a cavalry saber in the exhibit case, as well as a Brown Bess musket and a couple of other artifacts in there. And then once you get past that, it goes into a little bit more about Andrew Jackson. So after all of his revolutionary stuff, all this kind of stuff, he eventually would go to Salisbury. And once he left the Waxhaws, he never came back to this area. He became a lawyer, and he had a law office there. So we do have a brick from his law office in Salisbury. And then we also have a roofing slate from the original White House. So the one before the War of 1812. And then, as many people know, he was also involved in that as well. So we have one of what would have been his uniforms and a couple of different military objects. And then we go into the gold mines. So a lot of people don't realize that North Carolina had gold before California. Well, I guess they always had gold. It was just discovered here before it was discovered there. And Union County alone has, I believe, 30 gold mines. So Mecklenburg County has Reed Gold Mine, which is that's the most famous one. And we have one it's a couple miles from the museum. It's called the Howey Gold Mine. And it is on private property, so do not do not go there. But there was gold in Waxhaw. And then after that, we get into the Civil War. So we have a couple of artifacts in there, and we also have a really cool door. So when you come in, the door has bullet holes in it, and it is said to be from where Sherman's troops marched through the area, and they were shooting, and the bullet holes went through the door on the house.
Okay.
After that, and there's more things to learn in the exhibits, but I don't want to spoil it all. As you come around the corner, we get into the textiles, because Waxhaw was a pretty large textile town. The railroad came through in 1889, which is when the town was incorporated, and we had a mill. We've got a lot of quilts on display. We've got some spinning wheels. We've got a lot of stuff in there.
It's interesting to me, this area, when you talk about the rise of the middle class in the South, especially after the War of Northern Aggression. So when you talk about the rise of the middle class, you have to include the textile mills. They really did. I mean, you were either poor or you were really rich. There was nothing in between. And it wasn't until the textiles came into the South that you really saw an uplifting of a significant part of the South as far as an socioeconomic standpoint. And it played right into the strengths of the Scotch-Irish, because they were textile people.
Yeah, they knew how to spin. They knew
That's
how to...
right.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in the Revolutionary War, we have Miss Jackson Andrews' mom. She was spinning and selling her wares, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and many of the women in that time were taking the flax from the garden and spinning that flax and turning it into clothes and blankets and that sort of thing.
They could sell it, they could trade it. It was a good way. Like, we have a record of somebody trading butter for nails. So they would make butter. If they needed nails and somebody was a blacksmith, they could trade.
Right.
They didn't necessarily have currency that they would
Well, they
use.
certainly didn't have currency.
Yeah.
Currency didn't come along until Hamilton really kind of brought the...
Unless you were, of course, really, really rich and you had...
That's right.
Yeah.
And when you were really, really rich, you had the British sterlings.
Yeah,
and
so
British,
it wasn't... Yeah.
It wasn't even American.
Exactly.
Right? So... Well, this is a cool little museum, and it's a cool museum in many ways, not just because of the people here and not just because of your exhibit, but because of where you're located and how you really can plant your flag and say, no, we are really at the forefront of freedom in America and freedom in the world. And you have a great story to tell, and you were telling that story effortlessly in the community. What other type of things do you have going on here?
So, well, this week we actually, I guess this will be out after this, but we do have our 5th of July event, which is our Independence Day celebration. And we're going to have a live reading of the Declaration, and we're going to have living history and crafts and all that kind of stuff for kids. And then we also, which this is new, we are going to be hosting the Battle of Charlotte Labor Day weekend, so August 30th and 31st. We're very excited. We are excited to bring another battle reenactment to the Waxhaws. Waxhaw was actually at one point part of Mecklenburg County, so it still ties into us. And we're very excited about that. And we also do stuff all throughout the year. We do Living History Saturdays. We try to do them each month, but sometimes things get moved around. We do haunted trails in the fall. We do a spring festival. We do a whole bunch of different stuff. And all of our events are on our Facebook page.
How do they find that?
So if you go to Facebook and type in Museum of the Waxhaws, it's the first one. Our profile picture is it's red and it's got a picture of Andrew Jackson on the horse.
Okay.
And if you click on that and then go to events, all of our events will be listed there with dates, times, if you need tickets, if they're free, stuff like that.
How would they get a hold of you through email?
Our email is museumofthewaxhaws0@gmail.com, and you can send me an email there anytime. I can answer it from home, from wherever I am. You can also call us at 704-243-1832, but I can only answer that when I'm in the office.
I gotcha. So you've got these events going on. Long-range plans, I know that there are several things on the table here. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the long-range plans here?
So we closed for COVID when all that happened, and we just reopened last May. So we are a private nonprofit, and we're not funded by the town or the state or anything. We get all of our funding from donations and ticket sales and events like the battle that we just had. So we are in the process of getting some grants and stuff so that we can update some things in the building. But eventually we plan to kind of refresh the exhibit hall and do kind of a grand reopening event where we get people, even if they've been here before, they can come see the new exhibits and all the cool artifacts that we have that haven't been displayed before. And then we do plan to keep doing the battle reenactments and all the bigger events and even the smaller events. It's just a matter of keeping the momentum going.
You have some space here for people to rent out too, right?
We do have a rental space. We have a event room with a prep kitchen attached, and then we also have an auditorium that seats, I believe, 66 stationary seats, and then we have some chairs that we can add to the back as well.
Well, tell me a little bit about some of the buildings you have around here.
So when you come into the museum, you'll see that there's some older buildings outside. So the first one if you're walking from the main museum building, you'll see a well house, which is the Dillon Well House. And it is actually where, I believe it was 13 men met to sign the proclamation that took part of Mecklenburg County and part of Anson County and made them into Union County. So it is not originally from this site, but they did move it here to preserve it. And then next to that, we have a monument for Nay McNeely. So he did a lot of things in his very short lifespan. He was a school teacher. He worked for the post office. He was part of the House of Representatives, and then he became an ambassador. And he was actually on a ship, and I believe it was around 1915. He was sailing on a ship, and a German U-boat sunk the ship right before World War I. and he did not survive, unfortunately. And so his family had a memorial put up for him in their family cemetery, and then eventually, as most family cemeteries do, the family moved away, and they were not able to upkeep it. So they brought the memorial here for us to have on our property and to watch and upkeep.
What else?
And we also, the main point of our homestead is our Seacrest cabin. So the cabin is from about 1830, and it was also moved to our property. It is a very similar cabin to what Andrew Jackson's father would have built and what they would have lived in when he was a kid. We have a rope bed. We have the hearth, of course, which we do historical cooking in. So if you come to the museum and there's smoke coming out of the chimney, that's okay. There's somebody doing cooking inside the cabin. We've got a table in there. We've got spinning wheel, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty much the cabin inside the exhibits, but it's real. And then we also have a blacksmith shop. We have a barn, a smokehouse, and a spring house, as well as a historic garden, which we do have a fantastic gardener, and he keeps things growing in there year-round. And it's just, our exhibit guide will take you outside as well, so it shows you what each building is, where it's from, why it's here, why it's important, stuff like that. And it's really cool. It's really nice to get outside and see some historic things, because it's very rare that museums have outdoor areas where you can go through and go in the buildings and just kind of stand in the place that people would have stood in 1830, 1840, something like that.
I've been really impressed also, not just with that, but also with your gift store that you're trying to create here. You have, it's not just trinkets, it is things that are tied to the community. Tell me a little bit about your vision there.
So we've got some trinkets for the kids. Kids love them. We get a lot of field trips in, so we've got some things that are still really fun, and they're still historically related to things, but they're small enough that if kids come on a field trip, they can buy a souvenir and take it home. And we've also got some locally made items, so we try our best to partner with local artisans and people in our community to have a place to sell their items. And that, again, brings more stuff for our gift shop. So it's all wonderfully made items, and they're one of a kind. So we're not ordering them off of Amazon and sticking them out there. We've got handmade items from people in our community, and we've also got local authors. We've got a couple of other books in the gift shop. We've got T-shirts for the museum. We've got a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Tell our listeners who may be from California or other places around the world, how would they find your museum if they were coming into this area?
So we are really close to downtown Waxhaw. So we are located right off of the main highway that goes through downtown, which is called Highway 75. Downtown is called Main Street, of course, but Waxhaw is wonderful. It's a very quaint town. We've got some really good restaurants downtown. We've got a couple of bars, which are a newer addition to the town. And we've got a lot of good shopping. We've got a really good antique mall. And Waxhaw is growing, but the downtown part of it is still the same as it has been for centuries. We have actually, in the museum, we have an old mural of the downtown Waxhaw area from, I think, the very early 1900s. And if you look at it today, it's obviously there's a stoplight now. It's a little different, but you still see the same buildings, the same art on the outside of the buildings. The titles of the shops are on there, and it really makes it seem like you're stepping back into history a little bit when you're downtown, because you see the same stuff.
I know when I come through here, and you're exactly right, the old buildings are the same that they were at the turn of the 20th century, right? And maybe even beyond that. The difference, I think, between this community, this town, and other towns around the South, you go to towns with similar history, and they're boarded up. This is a very vibrant town still.
I don't think it's always been that way, though. I think it's gotten more vibrant, which is rare. It gets more vibrant as you go on.
Right.
And we have a lot of historic homes downtown as well, which I think helps. And I think the town they understand the importance of the history that they have. And they work to preserve it. So they work to highlight it, they work to preserve it, and they know the importance of it. So we have a historic preservation commission that works really hard, and they just understand why it's important, why it's here, why we should highlight it instead of covering it up. Which I think is part of the reason the buildings look the same, because they understand that people want to see that kind of stuff when they go places. Even if you live here, you want to see, you don't want everything to be all modern and changed and all that kind of stuff. When you come out of downtown, you go right past a gas station and around the corner, and we are on the right side. So our address is 8215 Waxhaw Highway. And we do have a pretty long driveway, but if you go all the way down the driveway, you'll pass the cabin first, and then you'll see the main museum building. And we have a parking lot and everything. So once you get here, just come in the front door, and we'll get you checked in and get your ticket and everything, and give you the guide and tell you where everything is.
This is a question I try to ask all my guests as we go through these episodes, and one that takes a little bit of thought process. But Caitlin, what does liberty mean to you?
To me, it's knowing that at the end of the day, you have your rights, you have your freedoms, you know that you're safe where you are. Being able to pursue what you want in life without having to worry about your government or a group coming in and taking that away from you.
Okay.
Going to jail, more harsh punishments, execution, which is something that not everybody can say today. It still goes on in other countries. And we don't worry about that here. So it's important to understand that you have the privilege to pursue your dreams and follow the path that you want to follow without having to worry about the repercussions of that.
That's exciting. And let me tell you, that's exciting coming from you, who is working in this museum that has such great history of freedom around the world. That resonates. Talk about resonate. That resonates. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.